How will you prepare for an upcoming program increment planning as a Scrum Master? One of the most important activity within a safe environment is the PI planning, also called the program increment planning. And the Scrum Master has a very important role to play within that event to make sure that it is effective. A probable question you always get if you are participating in an interview where the team is working in a safe environment is, walk me on what are the things you're going to do before every PI to ensure that your team is ready. In this video, I'm going to discuss 5 of them. Number 1, which I'm going to talk a bit about how you go about it, is to ensure that you take account of the plan and actual velocity, which means the work that your team committed to and what they completed. I'm going to explain a bit more on that. Number 2, now you conduct your capacity planning. Number 3, you liaise with the release train engineer to negotiate your capacity and at the same time seek for more information about the stories you're going to be working on. Number 4, ensure that you're facilitating problem solving, which is relentless improvement for your team. And number 5, you're double checking to ensure that all the facilities, the environment, and the tools that your team will be needing during the PI, they are good. All right. So let's go ahead and dive more deeper into why these are important and how are you going to go about this. And make sure that you're hitting the like button, subscribe if you're new here, because we're committed to providing information that will definitely help you stay ahead of others in the environment of SAFE. And for those who are looking for SAFE certification, our next certification session is March 17. Check the link below to enroll. Okay, let's get straight into our learning for today. So the first thing as a Scrum Master, which you do prior to every PI is, number 1, take account of the previous PI velocity. Why is that important? Remember, within the PI cycle, you commit to a particular amount of work based on your capacity. So it might be that you finish everything you commit to, but in a rare environment, most often you will not complete 100%. Right. Now you need to evaluate what your team committed to and what they actually completed. So the difference is going to be what you're carrying over. So the reason you take note of that is because when you are negotiating your capacity for the next PI, you need to take into consideration what your team actually carry over. So when you're discussing with your ROTE, you'll be able to share with them about that and then kind of negotiate to see how you can prioritize that before the PI. In that case, if you don't do that, what's going to happen when you get into a current PI and they assume that you have full capacity, they might be bringing you a lot of work that you probably will not take. Now, the second thing, when you already have that idea, the visibility on what your team is carrying over, it also helps you to plan your capacity, which is the second thing you do. You plan your capacity. How are you going to plan your capacity? You plan your capacity by leveraging the capacity planning sheet. Now, the capacity planning sheet, some organization might already have a template which they're going to give you. Some would not have a template, and you need to create yours. Okay, what are the most important things you should ensure that you have in the capacity planning sheet? You have all the names of your team members. You also have if they are full-time or they are part-time working in your team, do they have 100%? And then you make sure that you take the availability for the entire PI cycle, right? Let's say you're running a 10 iteration PI cycle. Make sure that you take the availability and then make sure that you take all their vacation, because that's what help you to understand your velocity. Okay. Now, the question I know you're going to be asking me is that what about our average velocity? Are we not supposed to plan based on our average velocity? In most of the cases, as an ROTE, you are no, I'm talking now from the ROTE perspective. They will still assign work based on your standard velocity, although you might be underperforming. Right. Now, there are opportunities during the PI planning for you to negotiate and trade it off. But the reason, if you're supposed to be delivering 30 and you're only delivering 20 for some reason, the reason I will not come down to 20 is because I will need you to put your team to meet the standard. Okay. So, number three, after you have conducted the capacity planning, you liaise with the ROTE to negotiate velocity. It's very important to reach out to the ROTE prior to the PI planning if your team had like a really huge carryover. Now you probably want to negotiate to see and to get them informed way ahead of time. As a Scrum Master, what you also want to do, which is what many Scrum Masters don't do, is that during the sprint or during your iteration, you start documenting. There's a comment section under each story. That space is not just for your team members, development team members, it's also for the Scrum Master to start noting some of the challenges. Now, one of the best practices will be to create also a Confluence page where you can be able to input every challenge, limitation. If your team is rolling over story, go and write the story number, what actually caused them to carry over that story. Have it documented somewhere. In that case, you also start learning more about your team and you can track the consistency of problems that are occurring. And that is how you become a better coach, right? So don't just wait until the last day of the sprint and then you're figuring out, oh, why didn't we complete this? It's a learning process. So if you understand that and you have the reason, you can easily negotiate with management and most especially with ROTE. As a Scrum Master, your contact point is with the ROTE to negotiate most of these availability of capacity, and also have an understanding of what are some of the features we're going to be working on so that you can also having discussion with your team. Number four, you facilitate problem solving workshop. Now, this is very, very important. Before every PI, make sure you have an evaluation of the entire PI cycle and have a problem solving workshop. Now, this is going to be what you call your overall retrospective for the PI, which is different from the one you would normally do during the iteration. It's different because it's at the end. You're looking at the entire process as a whole, right? At that time, you have all your plan capacity, or your plan versus actual. So your retrospective now based on the entire process. And the reason why this is important is because you want to be able to identify things that can help you improve on the next cycle and make sure that we're considering that during the PI planning. And then last, double check on the PI planning tools. Now, most of the tools and environment are upgrading. And if you're not constantly checking and making sure that right, you're still using the same breakout room, nothing has changed, you might be surprised when you get into the PI and they're like, oh, you know what, this PI, we're not using Teams, we're using our Mirrorbot to, like, okay, I wasn't aware about that. So you get already ahead of time and it's easier for you to understand and prepare way ahead of time. Okay, so those are the things you do prior to every PI as a Scrum Master. Now, let's give now a summary answer for those who have listened up to the end. You are not going to get a long answer like this video, right? So if I were to answer this question in an interview, can you explain to me how you prepare for every PI? I'm going to respond to this like this. Thank you very much for that question. Prior to every PI planning, there are a couple of things which are very important to me as a Scrum Master. The first thing I want to do is that I want to understand the final velocity of my team. The reason why this is important is because if we have carryover, which most often we try to limit it, then this is going to affect what we can commit to in the next PI. So I always try to check about that. The second thing, I always conduct my capacity planning, know which of my team members are taking vacation and that before time. And that helped me to already start negotiating the workload that my team can do with the ROTE. And I also liaise with the ROTE to make sure that we can have an idea of what my team will be working on ahead of time. It helps us start getting ready and having high discussion at a very high level. And most importantly, I support my team to facilitate problem solving, to identify if there was anything that held us back during the previous PI session and how can we improve on that. And lastly, I always double check to make sure that I understand the environment, the tools that we're going to be using for the PI. My team understand that. If we have a new team member, also make sure that they're up to date with all of the tools and this is going to help us have an entire PI. All right, that was it for you today. For those who are in the market, you're frustrated, you need coaching, check the link below. We can definitely help you to close that gap in less than no time. What we have done is that we have created a practical environment that helps you to visualize, not just listen, to be part of this and see how some of these demos occur. And that is what many people actually need to close the gap. Okay, I'll see you in my next video.